Tonight, modern society walks into court with a perfect mattress, warm water, and still pleads exhaustion before breakfast. You ask why the more comfortable we get, the more miserable we become. Jason wakes under perfect blankets, checks 3 apps, sees one rude comment, and declares war. Yet the fix is not throwing away your mattress. Ancient strength hides in boring places, including laundry, clean floors, and promises. Across the older world, a Norse farmer did not wait for motivation, because cattle, weather, fields, and mouths ignored mood. Sigurd rose because work existed, winter stored no sympathy, and missed tasks became hunger. Comfort solved many honest pains, and nobody sane should worship frostbite or rotten teeth as training. Convenience built a padded room where friction feels like attack, and that is a huge deal for your body. Ancestors would ask why ease became permission to stop. Viking life was not one raid poster, since most days involved farming, trade, craft, duty, law, and survival. Reality matters here, because the title promised a breakdown, not heroic fog and thunder. First claim is simple: comfort reduces pain, but unmanaged comfort reduces practice and patience. People are not weak because beds improved, they weaken when small demands become emergencies. Meanwhile, Lars buys beard oil, an axe pendant, and a podcast voice, then announces his return. Obviously, the costume does the heavy lifting, because jobs and repaired relationships are not photogenic. People want the fur cloak, not wet socks, chores, hunger, and silence. Norse forums often admit the modern Viking look is fantasy, while users understand the hunger for authenticity. Marcus says he wants ancient truth, but he needs shipping and door delivery. Beneath the joke sits a real wound, because people sense modern identity arrives packaged and hollow. Importantly, the costume does not just hide weakness from others, it hides weakness from the wearer. Fashion can point toward values, but when costume replaces conduct, everything becomes theater. Nobody becomes ancestral by looking dangerous in a parking lot. A person becomes steadier through repeated work. When we want ancestral strength, we must look at their chores, not just their jewelry. Picture Curry, the modern Drengr, finishing a warehouse shift without saga music. He does not need to live in a longhouse to borrow the old lesson, he needs conduct. Actually, many modern men do not need a war horn or collapse speech. Routine would damage weakness more than any fantasy axe, when loneliness becomes an alibi. Daniel says he has no tribe, then ignores calls, cancels training, and argues with strangers. Pew-found men do not report loneliness more than women, but men use networks less for support. That matters, because brotherhood fails when people refuse trust. Someone must call, listen, apologize, visit, and repeat until connection stops being theory. No skald ever praised a man for disappearing into a screen and calling the glow community. Structure is not glamorous, but it is the bridge between wanting and living better. Often the undertrained man blames modernity for wounds. Daily practice and braver conversations could start healing. Before anyone worships the savage image, remember the so-called dirty barbarian owned combs and washed. Archaeology keeps humiliating lazy stereotypes, because combs and washing tools keep turning up. Museum Nord describes Viking age hygiene as important, with washing and hair care. Rasmus has 3 chargers, 7 unfinished playlists, and a room raided by raccoons. Cosplay ancient hardness all you want, but clean your floor before declaring yourself Odin's heir. Cleanliness was not weakness or vanity, it was order, self-command, and respect. Hygiene also exposes a bigger truth: discipline is usually visible in boring places. One man who cannot manage laundry should hesitate before announcing primal order. Once order starts with the common floor, it moves into the mind, where Odin becomes a tool, not a logo. Half the internet talks like warriors but thinks like consumers, so Odin becomes packaging. Jorn Andreas Bull-Hansen frames Odin as a reminder to use intellect. Attention comes first, because a man who cannot hold thought cannot hold promises. Thought follows, because information without judgment turns people into livestock. Action proves the rest, because unused wisdom is another mood board. Eliot wants runes, myths, and thunder, but cannot sit without checking whether strangers approved him. Odin is not your excuse, Odin is where pretending meets thinking. Phones make this test brutal, because every empty second becomes bait. Since ancient wisdom means anything now, it should train the mind before decorating profiles. Here is the Norse minimum: clean room, kept word, trained body, useful work, and 5 silent minutes. Start small enough that excuses look stupid, then repeat until action becomes identity. Because the body learns from repeated proof, not dramatic self-talk, and the mind follows what the hands keep doing when nobody rewards the performance. A clean room means you stop treating chaos as personality and start proving order with hands. Kept promises mean your mouth stops outrunning character. Silent thought means you give the mind space before the feet assigns enemies. Useful work means you stop asking whether every duty feels inspiring before duty. History also needs rescuing from fake strongmen using tradition as stage makeup. Nordic women were not furniture or background for male fantasy reels. Swedish and Danish museum material shows women held stronger household, social, and legal roles than mythmakers admit. Eric shouting about ancient order usually learned the past from memes and gym captions. Real history is harder, because it gives nobody license to bully or pose. Tradition becomes useful when it teaches responsibility, not when it gives lazy men resentment. Women in these societies carried work, property, authority, memory, and social weight that cartoon history ignores. Likewise, stop worshipping violence as if every Scandinavian man searched for monasteries. Most Viking Age life was local and practical, with farms, tools, sailing, trade, and household work. Hakon worried more about fodder, weather, and death than whether his silhouette looked hard. Algorithms sell battle music because crop failure and repair work do not punch thumbnails. Young men love the fantasy of war because peace exposes unfinished duties. Mastering peace means showing up, paying bills, keeping promises, and staying useful. Raiding happened, violence and slavery happened, so the past was not a clean motivational poster. Daily life carried an ethic you can use. Competence mattered because incompetence punished others. Wait, it gets sharper at the thing, the public meeting where speech, witness, and reputation carried weight. Try that today by making one small promise, then keep it without announcing it. Now authenticity itself has become a product, wrapped in forest footage and claims society lied. Companies sell rugged truth to people who cannot unplug, and the rebellion arrives with affiliate links. Forums catch the same nerve when people describe Viking identity as naturalness and escape from plastic life. Oliver is not wrong to crave that, because life feels managed by screens and brands. However, authenticity cannot be bought beside sponsored stones. Content can inspire, but it can replace effort with the feeling of effort. An old scam wearing boots. Influencers know the ache, so they sell wilderness to men who have not walked their neighborhood. Belonging has suffered the same fate, becoming a slogan for men who want brotherhood without vulnerability or duty. Victor asks where his tribe went, then treats favors like transactions and honesty like threats. Any shield wall with zero inconvenience is not brotherhood, it is customer service with tattoos. Trust grows through action, pressure, secrets, hard conversations, and loyalty. Communities do not appear because a man posts, people build them. Men who never ask for help often call themselves strong, then wonder why nobody knows. Connection is not soft, because refusing every hand is bad maintenance. Summary should stay clear, because viewers clicked for a breakdown, not fog. Evidence says the ancient North was practical before cinematic, with meals, repairs, travel, argument, dirt, sickness, debt, kinship, weather, and work every single hard day. Kari does not need to become a movie Viking, he needs to become reliable enough for trust. Begin with sleep, food, movement, work, friendship, hygiene, attention, and service. Claims about modern weakness should never become cheap hatred of comfort, because medicine, safety, heating, and rights are real progress. Instead, the target is passive comfort, the kind that trains people to demand ease while losing skill. Past choices were often forced by danger, while modern choices are often hidden inside convenience. Therefore, the fair comparison is not old good and new bad, because that is childish propaganda. Better questions cut deeper. What did hardship train? What did comfort erase? And what habits can be chosen without lying? Practical masculinity was not a slogan about domination. It was usefulness under pressure, witnessed by others. Responsibility gave a man shape, because fields, boats, families, guests, tools, animals, and neighbors created demands no algorithm could mute. Research protects the script from fake nostalgia, since every claim must survive museums, data, and sense. Use the Vikings as a mirror, not an escape hatch, because mirrors reveal posture while costumes hide it. Measured honesty keeps the script useful, because the past was not paradise and the present is not hell. Notice how the lesson stays practical when it moves from image to behavior. Discipline, brotherhood, attention, work, and kept speech become tests anyone can start today. Even the modern Drengr does not need permission from a brand, guru, or comment section. Small proof beats loud identity when a man cleans one corner, answers one call, and finishes one task. Through that lens, ancient life becomes less of a fantasy and more of a pressure test for modern excuses. Besides, useful men are built publicly through boring private daily repetitions. Ultimately, this story works when it asks whether daily choices would earn respect from living people, not imaginary ancestors. Viewers can respect ancestors without becoming museum mannequins, because the point is conduct, not cosplay. Finally, the real Viking lesson is smaller than the internet wants and more useful than the fantasy. Wake up, work, think clearly, wash yourself, repair what you break, stay useful, and stop whining. Ancient life was harsh, unfair, violent, and often short, so romanticizing it is childish. Nevertheless, Old Norse life still points toward habits modern society keeps trying to replace with products. Clear stakes made effort obvious, while comfort hides consequences until the bill arrives inside the mind. Join this shield wall with one kept promise, not a slogan, because community begins when conduct becomes visible. Next, trade costume for conduct, look deeper at Odin's ravens, and remember, think and act. Steal what works from the ancestors, not the costume, because strength begins when ordinary duty stops needing applause.